Good morning. Sorry, I'm getting my... Good morning and welcome to Neighborhood Unitarian Universalist Church in Pasadena. Welcome to all members, friends, and guests. My name is May Colcord, and I am a member of your Board of Trustees and am serving as your worship associate today. Neighborhood Church creates and grows an inclusive community of faith connected by love, spirit, and service. We acknowledge our presence on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Gabrielino Tongva peoples, the traditional caretakers of the lands and waters of this campus. With respect for the rights and wisdom of Indigenous people, we acknowledge our harmful colonial histories and commit to decolonizing our own practices, to learning new ways of being in community and with each other, in good relationship with the Indigenous people of this land and with the land itself. Today's service is led by Reverend Everett Howe. Music director Dr. Zaneta Robles is accompanied today by Wells Lang with the neighborhood choir. Please take a moment to silence your devices as we begin our service. Families with young children are always welcome in the sanctuary, and there is additional seating in the entry foyer or the narthex. I have two brief announcements today. The Board of Trustees nominations deadline is approaching. Learn about the board application and selection process at a special meeting hosted by the nominating committee today after service here in the sanctuary. They will describe the opening positions as well as discuss the application process from start to finish and answer any questions. All are welcome to attend whether or not you intend to apply this year. Applications are due on Tuesday, March 11th. In addition, we're so excited to see so many visitors and friends each Sunday. Welcome. If you've been attending services and have questions about our Unitarian Universalist faith or want to learn more about Neighborhood Church, please join Director of Congregational Life, Ginger Fury, and Reverend Omega Burkhart for an informal, new to UU conversation on one of the following Sundays, March 16th, March 30th, or April 6th, directly after service. More extensive announcements as well as our order of service this morning are available as a link in the Sunday email. Our order of service is also visible online by scanning the QR code on the back of your hymnal with your phone camera. At this point, I'd like to welcome the 2025 Pledge Team forward for a special announcement.
Good morning. Hi. My name is Ann Rector. I'm a member of your pledge team. Welcome online as well, and thank you for pledging online. Last Sunday, we kicked off our 2025 pledge drive using the theme Gratitude for Yesterday, Generosity for Today, and Hope for Tomorrow. We can look at these beautiful redwood trees outside our sanctuary. These trees remind us of honoring the roots that sustain us, nurturing the trunk that embodies us, and investing in the branches that will carry us forward. We have an exciting opportunity thanks to a generous anonymous donor. There is a $5,000 challenge pledge going forward. This challenge is to get 15 different pledging units or families to raise their annual pledge by 10% or more. If we get 15 more pledging units to do this, we get an additional $5,000. Please consider raising your pledge by 10%, which will help us reach or to get our $5,000. And even if you can't raise 10%, please consider a step up to help us hope for tomorrow. In terms of our annual budget, we would like to clarify that rental income received from the school does go towards operating expenses. Last Sunday, rental income was not mentioned as contributing to meeting our needs, so we wanted to correct that omission and avoid confusion. Please visit our table after the service and have a snack, see our materials, and learn more. Right now, I'd like to introduce Jillian and Cesario, who would like to share their thoughts on pledging.
Our life flows on in endless song throughout its many stages. We hear the real ongoing sounds of neighbors, friends debating. Through worship services sublime, we hear sweet music ringing. It must continue in our lives, and this is why we're pledging. Hi, we're Cesario Perez.
And Jillian Simmons.
In our 35 years at Neighborhood Unitarian Universalist Church, we have become deeply embedded in life here, and it has been embedded in us. We dedicated our children here, raised them to be adults who have chosen professions in which they live out their UU values. We've memorialized and celebrated the passing of family members and friends, their weddings and other occasions. We've served on the board, participated in building the program building and chapel, made friends, served and eaten a lot of great meals, had lots of fun times and parties and other celebrations. We've made signs, made phone calls, written letters, marched in protests. We've been served by an incredible roster of ministers, music directors, and lay staff. This congregation wrapped us in love and support when we were in crisis, and we have been glad to support others in their times of challenge. Over the years, the people of Neighborhood UU Church have been an ongoing inspiration, showing us so many ways to live our values and reminding us that there is so much more to explore and do to help make this community, this congregation, and our world a better place. The work is always beginning again of caring, sharing, learning, teaching, building, repairing, laughing, crying, consoling, and loving. The work will continue, but we must do the work. We are the village that is needed to get it done. All of us must contribute our time, our talents, and our resources as we are able to keep this community vibrant and strong so we can help each other through challenges like fires and sickness, and so we can reach beyond our campus to people around us to build the beloved community that we talk of. This is why we pledge. Please join us in pledging.
And we're going to raise our pledge 10%.
Thank you.
Please join us.
Again, welcome to Neighborhood Church, whoever you are and wherever you are in your spiritual journey. Welcome to this inclusive faith community connected by love, spirit, and service.
morning. Our chalice lighting words this morning are by Reverend Katie Romano Griffin. Come, let us enter this space of hope and community. Come, let us enter this space with our sorrows, our joys, our passion, and our compassion. Come, let us enter this space with the stories of our ancestors, for their strength and wisdom beats in our hearts. Come into this space, present to the beloved companions who move beside us. Come into this space, mindful that together we are building a future for other generations. Come into this space and let us worship. And now, as we have gathered, let us take a moment to center ourselves. My friends, we have entered a new stage of a struggle for justice and compassion that has been with us forever. It has been with us forever, but it is now more intense, and more of us see it for what it is. We are called to take part in this struggle, and it will require endurance. We are also approaching this beginning of spring, a season of hope and renewal and rebirth, a time in which we can perhaps find some spiritual resources to support us. So I invite you now to join me in a time of meditation and prayer, to connect to that which can give us strength and solace. If you are willing, settle into a position that helps ground you. And if you are comfortable doing so, you can close your eyes or look softly into the middle distance. And breathe. Just for a moment, feel your breath in and out. And feel the earth beneath you. Feel the presence of the people who are nearest to you here, together in this space, breathing softly. Feel this whole room of your community. All of us here, now, on this land, on this earth. Imagine all who have passed through this room throughout its existence. Ancestors, physical and spiritual, living and no longer physically with us. Think of the workers who built this building. Think of the people over thousands and thousands of years who have walked on this land. Think of all that this land has witnessed in those thousands of years. Feel the vastness of history that we are a part of. Now, slowly draw your attention back to this time, but feel the power of the earth that supports us. Draw your attention back to this room, but feel the earth beneath you. feel once again the presence of those around you. And bring your awareness back to your breath. Spirit of life, Spirit of love, God of many names. In times of struggle, may we feel our community surrounding us. May we feel the power of history behind us. May we feel the strength of the earth supporting us. And may we know that your love is with us always, so that we may love and support others in turn. Amen. Blessed be.
Please rise in body or in spirit and join us in singing our opening hymn, number 345. With joy, we claim the growing light.
There. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Hannah Peterson. I'm the Spiritual Exploration Assistant. And at this time, I'd like to invite all the kids and anyone who'd like to get a closer look as we read our book. Oh, come up to the front. All right, well, today we're going to be reading Change Sings by Amanda Gorman and Lauren Long. I can hear change humming in its loudest, proudest song. I don't fear change coming, and so I sing along. I scream with the skies of red and blue streamers. I dream with the cries of tired and true dreamers. I'm a chant that rises and rings. There is hope where my change sings. Though some don't understand it, those windmills of mystery, I sing with all the planet and its hills of history. I hum with 100 hearts, each of us lifting a hand. I use my strength and my starts, take a knee to make a stand. I'm bright as the light each day brings. There is love where my change sings. I show others tolerance, though it might take some courage. See that? He's plugging his ears. He doesn't want to hear the song. I don't make a taller fence, but fight to build a better bridge. I talk not only of distances, from where and how we came. I also walk our differences to show we are the same. I'm a movement that roars and springs. There's a wave where my change sings. Change sings where? There, inside me. Because I'm the change I want to see. And as I grow, it grows like seeds. I'm just what the world needs. I'm the voice where freedom rings. You're the love your bright heart brings. We are the wave starting to spring, for we are the change we sing. And we're what the world is becoming, and what we know it won't be long. And we know it won't be long. We all hear change strumming. Won't you sing along? The end. And now, if you'd please join me in singing our children out to their classes.
Each Sunday, our congregation dedicates 100% of its contributions to 501c3 organizations or neighborhood church-based social justice activities that are making a difference in our community and the world. Each selected guest organization aligns with our community's mission and values and is nominated by church members who are often longtime volunteers and supporters of these change-making organizations. You can donate in one of two ways. You can use your cell phone to donate by texting the number on the screen. Or if you'd prefer to donate in person, put your donation in one of the designated boxes during music or after the service. There is a donation box here in the front, behind the back center row, and in the narthex entry on the table. You may rise during the music to put your donation in the box if you wish. Please extend help to those in your neighborhood who may need assistance reaching the donation boxes. If you wish to make a payment towards your pledge or contribute to church operations, make a note in the subject line or use an envelope available at those donation boxes. This week, our gifts will support the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, or UUSC. Here with more information is Lynn Miyamoto.
Good morning. I'm Lynn Miyamoto. I'm a member here at Neighborhood Church, but I'm also the co-chair of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, or the UUSC. UUSC's work began in 1939 when the Reverend Waitstill and his wife at the time, Martha Sharp, took an extraordinary risk, helping refugees escape Nazi persecution in Europe. Today, UUSC advances human rights and social justice around the world, partnering with over 77 organizations, supporting those who confront unjust power structures and mobilizing to challenge oppressive policies. Our work is grounded in the belief that all people have inherent power and dignity. Last April, my husband and I, Kevin Croker, traveled to Poland to meet with some of our UUSC partners. One of the partners, Foundation Towards Dialogue, a Roma feminist-led organization, took us to visit Block 13 at Auschwitz. It is here where Roma families were sent to and ultimately murdered simply for being Roma. It was a sobering experience, but a clear reminder of the horrors of the rise of fascism and the dismantling of democracy can result in. Given this clear threat to our freedoms and the freedom of others, UUSC will continue to support our partners in their work, both abroad and in the US. Of the many UUSC's advocacy initiatives, I'd like to talk about two. The first is Pink Haven. As many of you know, our trans and gender expansive beloveds are under attack and being criminalized in many US states and by the federal government. This is so serious that they fit in the criteria to be designated as internally displaced people by the United Nations. The UUA and the UUSC are partnering directly with frontline trans-led organizations to create networks of safety and direct support for beloveds who need to relocate, access healthcare across state lines, or stay as safe as possible where they are. Because of safety concerns for these trans organizers, we are prioritizing security over transparency right now, which is allowing us to move together in deep trust during these crucial, scary times. Please note that all your donations to Pink Haven are moving directly into the hands of trans-led organizers and being used to support trans and non-binary people in accessing the resources and the support they need to survive and thrive. I encourage you to give as abundantly and courageously as you are able so we can help support this work. The second initiative is Together We Rise, Rapid Response Task Force, a mobilization network designed to take immediate action when civil liberties, democracies, and human rights are at risk. Our faith in human dignity, our belief in collective liberation, our commitment to justice calls us to act. By signing up on the UUSC website to be part of Together We Rise, you'll receive urgent alerts and opportunities to act, whether through advocacy, amplifying frontline voices, or pressuring policymakers to protect our communities. Thank you to the Share the Plate Committee for allowing me to speak to you today on how your support allows our church to be part of the solidarity movement that can make justice possible. Thank you.
We thank you for giving generously.
We sing When Jesus Wept by William Billings. William Billings was one of America's earliest known professional composers, a composer of early music, largely self-taught, and his music is often seen as very square. And so we juxtapose this idea of kind of focus and austerity and concentration with the idea of Jesus as a focusing force in dealing with those who have been marginalized and are going through difficult times. Imagine what it was like when Jesus wept.
When
The words of Unitarian minister Theodore Parker in 1852. I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by the experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience, and from what I see, I am sure it bends towards justice. Things refuse to be mismanaged long.
The words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King in 1958. Evil may so shape events that Caesar will occupy a palace and Christ a cross, but that same Christ arose and split history into AD and BC, so that even the life of Caesar must be dated by his name. Yes, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. There is something in the universe which justifies saying, truth crushed to earth will rise again.
The words of storyteller and author Melvin Bray in 2017. The challenge is that people of goodwill often act as if the arc of the moral universe bends toward justice on its own. It does not. God made humanity the catalyst toward this moral end. Unless people of goodwill act in good faith toward a just end, justice will not be found. Justice, like all other virtues, is a relational challenge seeking a relational response.
Together from our seats, seated in a posture conducive to warm, flowing, healthy singing. Let's join together in singing this meditative hymn, I Know This Rose Will Open. We will sing it once, all together in unison at the same time, and then we'll sing it in canon until we all come to completion. I know this rose will open.
Thank you, that was beautiful. Who lives? Who dies? Who tells your story? That is the title of the closing number of the hit musical Hamilton, which opened almost exactly 10 years ago now. With a hip-hop score and a Broadway cast that was primarily people of color, it tells a fresh version of the story of the founding of the United States, focusing primarily on Alexander Hamilton and his allies, his enemies, and his loves. But throughout the musical, there is a recurring thread. What stories get included in our history? How do we know about them? And who tells them? Early in the first act, Hamilton and his revolutionary friends sing that they hope their children will one day tell the story of tonight. Later, in the same act, George Washington sings an echo of this. He says, "Let me tell you what I'd wish I'd known when I was young and dreamed of glory. You have no control. Who lives? Who dies? Who tells your story?" And at the close of the musical, Washington's words, "Who lives? Who dies? Who tells your story?" become the title and the refrain of a song in which Hamilton's widow, Eliza, tells how she spent the rest of her life establishing her husband's legacy by telling his story. I've been thinking a lot recently about history and about which stories get told. I work part-time for the Unitarian Universalist Association, helping to maintain and grow the Worship Web, which is an online collection of readings and prayers and rituals and poetry. But my supervisor, the Reverend Erica Hewitt, sometimes finds other projects for me to work on, and early last year, she asked if I could help with a project to find out more information about certain 19th century Black Unitarians and Universalists. And doing this research made me think about the questions raised by the musical Hamilton. Who tells your story? Why are some stories told and retold and others not? And how do these stories affect our understanding of history? Today, at this crisis point in the history of the United States, these questions feel especially relevant. Relevant, but not new. The 14th century English poet Geoffrey Chaucer had an explanation for why some people's stories are remembered and others aren't. He imagined a goddess of fame who carves people's names on the side of a giant mountain of ice. If your name is carved on the sunny side of the mountain, the ice melts away over time, and you are slowly forgotten. If your name is carved on the ice on the shady side of the mountain, your memory lives on. The goddess decides. But outside of Chaucer's dream 700 years ago, it's not just the goddess that decides. There are other forces at work. Some people and some stories are ignored because of the biases of the storytellers or the biases of society. And some stories never get to happen. One of the 19th century Black Unitarians I researched for my job was the Reverend John Bird Wilkins. I had not heard of him before, and the initial information that I was given about him was this. John Bird Wilkins was a Black man who had been a Baptist minister. In 1887, he founded a liberal church in Chicago, and he affiliated with Unitarians. But he left Chicago in 1888, gave up preaching, and made his living afterwards as an inventor. It turns out that there's a lot more to his story than that summary suggests. I learned some more about him by searching through newspapers from the 1880s, and I got further information from his entry in the online Dictionary of Unitarian and Universalist Biography, and also from a family history that was published by his great-granddaughter, Carolyn Marie Wilkins. And I will tell you what I learned. But since I began the sermon with the question, who tells your story? I want to emphasize that you'll be hearing Reverend Bird Wilkins' story as told by a 60-year-old white man interpreting the sources that I mentioned. I will try my best, but there will be perspectives missing from the tale that I relate. And I also want to warn you that this story includes violence and threats of violence. So, let me tell you about John Bird Wilkins. In the mid-1880s, he was a Baptist preacher in St. Paul, Minnesota. But in 1887, he was called to be the new pastor at Bethesda Baptist Church in Chicago. So he moved there with his wife and his 2 children. Pretty quickly, he was involved in controversy because Reverend Bird Wilkins started serving open communion in his congregation. That is, he would share communion with people who weren't Baptists. This may not sound like much to you and me as modern-day Unitarian Universalists, but it was a big deal for the conservative Baptists at the time. And in July 1887, Reverend Bird Wilkins received an anonymous letter which said, "If the Baptists don't put a stop to your having open communion, we will put a stop to it. You can't live in Chicago. If we can't get you one way, we will get you another." And Reverend Bird Wilkins had other views as well that angered some people. On August 21st, 1887, he preached a sermon that resulted in a front-page article in the Chicago Tribune. Reverend Bird Wilkins' text that Sunday was the episode from the book of Matthew, in which Jesus tells a rich young man to give away all his possessions and all of his money, because it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God. Using this passage and others, Reverend Bird Wilkins argued that Jesus, the Apostle Peter, and the 4 evangelists were all socialists. The world will call it socialism, he preached, but I will call it Christianity. It seems to me that he has a good point there, and yet some in his congregation and many of his fellow Baptist ministers did not appreciate this sermon. But when conservative Baptists forced Bird Wilkins to leave his congregation, he found support among the local Unitarians. They helped him as he founded a new congregation, which he called the People's Temple. A newspaper in Wisconsin wrote that this congregation would be, quote, the first African Unitarian church in the history of the world. This was in September and October of 1887. But in January 1888, Reverend Bird Wilkins was once again on the front page of the Chicago Tribune, because on New Year's Day, while he was preaching at the People's Temple, unknown attackers set fire to his house. Another anonymous letter came saying, "We believe you are teaching a religion from the devil. We will kill you before you shall hurt us with your new religion. Our white Orthodox churches tell us to run you out of this town, and you have got to go. This is our last warning." This attack on his home and his family was too much to bear, and Reverend Bird Wilkins did leave Chicago sometime in 1888. The People's Temple did not survive his departure. Records of Bird Wilkins are scanty after that, but he seems never to have led a congregation again. So why is Reverend Bird Wilkins' story not more widely known? One reason, of course, kind of the first level explanation is that even though he founded, as the newspaper said, the first African Unitarian church in the history of the world, it closed his doors less than a year after it opened them. But the reason it closed its doors was because it was such a radical idea, its founder had been chased out of town with credible threats of violence. The reason why Reverend Bird Wilkins is not well known today is not because of the whims of the goddess of fame, but rather because the people of Chicago would not let him do the work that could have led to a new strain of Unitarian culture in the Midwest. And the local Unitarians were unable or unwilling to help him through this additional crisis. Who lives? Who dies? Who tells your story? The people telling the stories in Chicago in 1888 did not think that any of this was significant enough to keep in memory. A brief controversy in the newspaper, an article about arson, and then silence, and the warmth of sunlight melting John Bird Wilkins's name in the ice. Interestingly enough, there is a somewhat analogous story that happened more recently. The Reverend Carlton Pearson was a Black Pentecostal minister in Tulsa, Oklahoma, with a large following and with impeccable credentials in the evangelical community. But in the 1990s, he had an epiphany. He finally could no longer believe that a loving God would condemn anyone to an eternity in hell. In that moment, he realized that he was a universalist. Heaven is universal. Heaven is for everyone. But Pentecostals view universalism as heresy and as the work of the devil. Reverend Pearson was denounced by the leaders of his denomination. His colleagues abandoned him. Most of his parishioners left, and he had to sell the church where he had previously preached to 6,000 people every Sunday. But he made a connection with the minister of All Souls Unitarian Church in Tulsa, and eventually about 200 members of his former congregation started attending All Souls Tulsa. Reverend Pearson became an affiliate minister there, and he continued to preach at All Souls until his death in 2023. Let me be clear, this merger of congregations, of church-going cultures, was not easy, and it was not problem-free. But compare the stories. Here is another Black minister from a conservative tradition whose theology became so liberal that he ended up in common cause with Unitarian Universalists. Reverend Bird Wilkins was nearly forgotten. What about Reverend Pearson? Well, in 2005, the radio show and podcast This American Life had an episode devoted to his story. UU World magazine did a feature on him and on how All Souls Tulsa was changed by this influx of former Pentecostals. And in 2018, Netflix released a movie about his story called Come Sunday. I think it's still available, and I recommend it. So why did Reverend Pearson's story turn out differently than Reverend Bird Wilkins's? Why does it get told? Because Reverend Pearson had the chance to preach his new beliefs. He had a pulpit at All Souls and eventually at other congregations as well. And to complete the symmetry of the comparison, one of the congregations that he ended up leading was a New Thought church in Chicago, the very city that had chased out Reverend Bird Wilkins. What changed between these two stories was that the arc of the moral universe had bent just a little closer to justice. And that little bend helped Reverend Pearson succeed where Reverend Bird Wilkins was prevented from succeeding. That little bend in the arc had taken a century of struggle and hard work, but it had an effect. And yet, campaigns of arson and anonymous personal threats against religious professionals are still with us today. I am thinking, for example, of the many congregations whose Black Lives Matter banners and pride flags are regularly defaced, torn down, and, yes, burned. And I think of Cristina Rivera, a Latina woman on the UUA Board of Trustees in 2017, who received anonymous threatening letters from someone who was almost certainly a Unitarian Universalist. We may be closer to justice than we were in the 1880s, but there is still a long way to go, as is becoming more and more clear. Who lives? Who dies? Who tells your story? Ironically, these words apply to the musical Hamilton itself. Soon after it became a sensation, Hamilton was criticized for not squarely facing the issue of slavery and for ignoring the role of Native Americans in the early history of the United States. Lin-Manuel Miranda, the show's creator, agreed with these criticisms, and Leslie Odom Jr., who played Aaron Burr in the Broadway run of the show, spoke about them. He said, "Lin wrote the story that was on his heart to write. I signed on to be a part of the show that I believed in. That was our leg of the race. Now it's your turn. There's no doubt in my mind that some young kid is going to look at Hamilton and write the show that makes what we did look quaint." That, I think, is our job, to be that young kid, to see the failings of what has been done and said and told before, to understand that every storyteller and every society brings biases to their tales, and to see if we can highlight the voices of people who have been silenced in the past. We can tell the stories of John Bird Wilkins and others like him, and we can include not just what happened, but also what wasn't allowed to happen. If we retell these stories, and if we hand the microphone to people who know more about them than we do, we will better understand our past and our present. This is relational work. And as our reading today from Melvin Bray tells us, this is how we bend the arc of the moral universe. We are living in historic times, and the stories we tell are the first draft of history. May we tell these stories well, so that our descendants will know not only what happened in these times, but also what could have been, and what may yet still come to be when the arc bends closer to justice. May it be so. Blessed be.
Please rise in body or in spirit and join us in singing our closing hymn, number 293, O Star of Truth.
Through clouds of doubt and fear.
When we are surrounded by lies, our stories tell us the deepest truths. When we are despairing, our stories give us hope. When we are struggling, our stories remind us that challenges precede every victory. May truth and hope and strength carry us together through the coming years, so that justice and the moral arc will bend towards the destination that we